Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into two really interesting parables from Islamic tradition that get at a timeless question. What does it actually mean to live a life of faith? We've got one story about personal piety and another about selfless service. So let's see how these two different journeys might just lead to the same place.
All right, so let's get right to the heart of it. What's the real way to show your faith? Is it all about that quiet, personal devotion? Your own private relationship with God? Or is it measured by what you do for others, your service out in the world? These stories are going to give us some serious food for thought on that one.
Okay, so first things first, let's meet the main characters in our two stories. Now, on the surface, their lives might seem pretty normal, but trust me, each one is on this unique spiritual path, and that path is about to get a major stress test. So in our first story, we meet a young girl named Fatima, and she's, the model kid, pious, well-mannered, always praying, reading the Quran, helping her mom around the house. Her life is really all about that quiet, personal kind of faith.
And then, in our second story, we meet a brother-sister duo, Abdullah and, get this, another girl also named Fatima. But their devotion, it's shown a little differently. It's not so much about solitary prayer, but about their everyday actions. And it all starts with the deep respect they show their mother, while they're just, getting ready for school.
Okay, so for everyone involved in both of these stories, what seems like just another ordinary day is about to get, completely turned upside down. Something sudden, something totally unexpected is going to come along and test the very foundation of what they believe. All right, so for our first Fatima, the test kicks off with a super simple, private moment. She's just in her room, combing her hair, and for a second, she takes off her headscarf, just to make it easier. She's planning to put it right back on. It's one of those moments where you think, nobody's watching. It's fine.
Yeah, but in that exact moment, everything changes. The whole vibe of the room just shifts. It gets dark, and this shadowy figure, kind of like black smoke, just appears behind her. And it starts whispering these really menacing things about her hair being uncovered. Suddenly, her private piety is facing a very real, very supernatural challenge. Now for the siblings, their test is way more down to earth, but no less intense. It's a classic moral dilemma. See, Abdullah has a super important test at school that day, but just as they're heading out the door, their mom cries out and just collapses from this sudden, awful headache. So what do? What do you prioritize? Your future, your education, or your duty to your family right here, right now?
All right, so here's the crucial part, right? How do they actually respond to these totally different challenges? Because both of them are going to dig deep into the core teachings of their faith, but they're going to go about it in completely different ways.
So Fatima is, understandably, terrified by this shadow thing. But here's the thing, she doesn't just freak out and panic. Instead, this specific warning from her mother just pops into her head, a lesson that directly connects wearing the headscarf to spiritual protection. And that memory, that becomes her weapon. And she doesn't waste a second. She immediately puts that teaching into practice, reciting a prayer to seek refuge in God from Satan. It's a direct, powerful, vocal stand pushing back against fear with faith.
Meanwhile, Abdullah, facing his dilemma, makes an equally firm choice. He looks right at his mother and lays out this core principle of his faith. He says, basically, forget the test. Serving you right now is the most important thing, because Allah loves when a child serves their mother.
And listen, their response isn't just talk. It's all about selfless action. They immediately jump in and divide up the work. Fatima heads to the kitchen, starts doing the dishes, makes some tea. Abdullah gets to work cleaning the house. He even fixes a broken fan. And then he sits with his mom, massaging her head to try and ease her pain. You see, their faith is being shown through what they do. Okay, so what happens next? What are the results of these very different acts of faith? Well, the stories frame the outcomes as divine rewards, and each reward is perfectly tailored to the test that they just faced. For Fatima, the payoff is bam, immediate and super dramatic. The second she says God's name, the shadow lets out a scream, vanishes into a puff of smoke, and the light and peace just flood back into her room. Her personal act of piety brought her direct, divine protection. Just like that. A little later, her mom explains the deeper meaning behind what just happened. She tells her that the headscarf provides something called nur. Think of it like a divine light, a light that signifies respect, safety, and honor. It's a reward for her obedience to God's commands.
Now for Abdullah and Fatima, their reward is a lot quieter, but honestly, just as profound. Because of their dedicated care, their mother's health is restored. By the afternoon, her headache is totally gone. Their selfless service had a real, tangible, healing effect. So right here we can see this amazing side-by-side comparison. Fatima gets Noor, this reward of spiritual light and protection. The kids, on the other hand, get Raza, which is this deep blessing of earning God's pleasure through their service. So you have two totally different tests, two distinct kinds of rewards, but both are seen as coming from the exact same divine source. Pretty cool, right?
And the lesson doesn't stop there. When their dad gets home and hears the whole story, he really drives the point home. He tells them, you know, for children who serve their parents like you did today, Allah makes their own paths in life easy. So their reward isn't just for today. It's this blessing that can extend through their whole lives.
So what's the big takeaway when you put these two stories together? What's the bottom line? Well, it really all comes down to how belief gets turned into action. All right, let's break down the key takeaways here. First, we see that personal acts of faith, like the hijab, are shown as a real source of spiritual protection and honor. Second, serving your parents isn't just a nice thing to do. It's presented as one of the most important duties you have. But here's the real kicker. Both that internal, personal piety and the external act of service are shown to be equally powerful, equally valid ways to connect with God and earn His favor.
Which, of course, brings us right back to where we started. After hearing these two stories, which one seems more important? Is it the internal, personal journey, or the external, community-focused one? But, maybe asking which one is better is the wrong question entirely. What these stories seem to suggest is that they aren't two separate paths at all. Think about it. Fatima's inner faith gave her the strength to face that external threat, and the siblings' selfless action was just the outward expression of their inner values. So maybe true devotion isn't about choosing between them. Maybe it's about understanding how they're connected, how they fuel each other. One is like the root of the tree, the other is the fruit. You can't have one without the other. They're both just inseparable parts of a single, devoted life.